Everyone I know who is struggling to get clients eventually lands on the same idea. I'll just create a digital course. Passive income, something that makes money while I sleep. And every time I hear this, I think the same thing. You are not simplifying your business. You're starting a completely new one. And I know this because I did it too. And it cost me a year of my life and over $10,000 in Facebook ads before I made one meaningful sale. In part one of this series, I talked about the employee model for experts, the one most people accidentally fall into when they get way too busy and decide, oh, I need some help. Today, I want to talk about the other model that people reach for when things get hard, the digital product business. I think this is the most misunderstood business model in the expert service space. And I speak from experience. I have made every single mistake there is to make with this business model. And I have spent a lot of money in the process figuring it out. And I've come out the other side with a pretty clear picture of what it really takes to succeed with this. Picture this, the year was 2015. Steve, my husband and partner, and I had just come off of our best year ever in our branding agency. We had gone from $3,000 for a 1 day intensive to $10,000 for a 1 day intensive in the span of just 12 months, which meant we also had priced ourselves out of a lot of the people that we had originally worked with. And at that moment, I thought, this is the perfect opportunity. I will create a digital course, a cheaper version of what we do for all these people who can't afford to hire us anymore because we've raised our prices. I mean, it sounds logical to me, but boy, was I wrong. Here's the mistake that I truly did not understand that I was making. What I really didn't understand at the time, and what took me over a year to figure out, was that I hadn't added a product to my existing business. I had accidentally started an entirely new business. And obviously, I didn't realize that. A business with a completely different audience, completely different marketing strategy needed, completely different economics, and completely different, everything. The person who's ready to hire someone for $10,000 to do it for them does not want to DIY it with a $500 consolation prize. They are fundamentally different people with fundamentally different problems and desires. I know this because in the years that we sold this online course with thousands of sales, exactly one person ever ended up hiring us afterward for our services. Just one. I had built a product for an audience that didn't exist in my current world yet, and I had to go find that audience from scratch, which gave me a completely new and different business problem. So instead of solving the one problem I was experiencing in my premium service business, I had created a completely new problem. This is the mistake that I see service providers make constantly. They're struggling to get clients and they keep getting pushback on the price. So they decide to spin up a cheap digital product to bring in some quick cash. What they don't realize is that that is not simplifying their business, it's starting a second one. And accidentally starting a second business when you're already struggling in the first one is a very expensive distraction. There's nothing passive about passive income. Now, once I realized I had a completely new business on my hands, I had to figure out how to actually sell it. And that meant learning Facebook ads from scratch. I spent $10,000 on Facebook ads and another $7,500 on the first ad company and ads that I hired briefly but failed miserably, plus another $6,500 on a program and a coach so that I could learn it myself. And I spent all that without making almost any sales. So when I finally started testing my ads, I spent over $10,000 in just a couple of months before I made any kind of meaningful return. Now, that would make most people quit, but I kept going because I was so determined. And also because our branding agency was profitable enough to fund my very expensive education. This is something I'm going to come back to in part three because it matters a lot. Eventually, I got the ads to work. And I remember the first month that I finally felt like I had cracked the code. I had some ads that were converting and I quickly scaled them up to $20,000 a month and I generated $40,000 in sales. That was 80 sales of a $497 course. And that felt incredible. $20,000 in profit in 1 month selling a DIY course that didn't require me to deliver on anything. Amazing. Okay, amazing until you subtract the $24,000 I had spent to get there, right? And all of a sudden, we're in the negative 4,000. If you account for the 10 plus months of my time that I had spent trying to figure all of this out and all the $20,000 branding clients I didn't take on because I was working on getting this up and running, I mean, how much this cost? I don't want to think about it. But it was an investment. And of course, now that I knew that I could make money with this, I had this bright future in front of me of selling this program. So even though this first windfall felt like it didn't quite get me back to zero, I also had built an asset and I had built a lot of skills. And I was confident I was going to make a lot more money on the back end. But again, remember, had I not started down this digital product path and stuck with intensives instead, we could have done one intensive and made the same amount of money with about 10% of the effort. No biggie, sunk cost fallacy. I was feeling good about keeping this going and starting to bring in profit from now on from this product. It may have been a steeper investment than I had realized, but now that I had figured it out, there was a lot of upside. And then pretty soon after, the ads kind of stopped working. The funnel that I had spent a year building and testing and optimizing to turn every dollar that I spent on ads into $2 was costing more and more per sale. Now $1 was only turning into $1.50 or $1.25. Still a profit, but I was starting to feel like, man, I'm hustling a lot to make Mark Zuckerberg a lot of money without keeping much of this for myself. Imagine generating $25,000 in sales, but having to spend $20,000 on ads to make them. So I kept working on the funnel, testing new creative, updating the webinar, updating the emails. I would improve the conversion rates for a little bit and the, price per sale would go down, but then it would go up again. And this happened repeatedly. I went in this cycle over and over again. What worked in 2016 didn't work as well in mid 2017. What I finally got to work in 2017 didn't work at all in 2018. The digital marketing landscape was shifting constantly. More competitors were entering the space every day. Audiences were getting fatigued with webinar funnels, and I had to keep reinventing my approach just to keep this even mildly profitable. This is what I mean when I say there's nothing passive about passive income. Yes, sure, sales come in while you sleep. That's technically true, but your time is still needed. It just shifts from delivering client work to becoming a full time marketer. Most of your energy is going to go into learning and testing funnels, writing ads, building audiences, and staying ahead of an algorithm that changes constantly without warning. If that sounds like something you want to work on and master, awesome. But go into it knowing that that's what you're signing up for. And you're going to be spending money all along the way. And while I wish it were true that you could just hire a marketing agency to take care of this for you, believe me, I wanted to do that and did it many, many times. Believe me when I tell you that the economics are very hard to make work. I've paid anywhere from $1,500 a month to $5,500 a month for Facebook ad companies. I've had friends spend $10,000 or more a month on marketing agencies to do this work. And I've gotten some great results from that. And I have rarely had those results last. And it's not because the people I've hired are not good at what they're doing. Obviously, they know what they're doing to some extent, but they go through the same periods of testing that I had to go through. And I haven't found their results to be sustainably better over the long period, especially to make up for the cost of using them. And the whole time, you're paying Zuckerberg a huge portion of the revenue from the ads, and you're now also paying a portion of your profit to the ad company. The economics usually only work in your favor if you are selling a lot. And while the price point you pay for an ad company won't determine whether they're good or not, I also haven't found that cheaper ad companies can possibly deliver at the highest level. There's just too much involved and there's too much required of them. And they have to have a really high level of skills, especially creative skills. They need to get paid a decent amount of money to have both the skills and the time to even do this well. And even then, my most expensive ad companies have fallen down on the job. The economics are completely different in a product based business. And here's the math problem that most people don't really think through before they launch a digital product. To keep it simple, let's say you want to make $120,000 a year selling a $500 course. Well, that means you need to sell at least 240 of them. And that's only if the cost per acquisition is $0, which it never is. Okay, on the flip side, to make $120,000 a year selling a $10,000 service, you only need 12 clients. And the effort required to find and convert 240 plus buyers of a low ticket product is substantially more than the effort required to find and close 12 premium clients, especially if you already have a network and referral engine for the premium clients and you're basically starting from scratch for the digital product audience. Now, this doesn't mean that the digital product model is bad. Not at all. I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars from that course over the years. And more importantly, I learned an enormous amount about marketing and funnels and audience building that has served me well ever since. So I'm a huge fan of this model. What I'm not a huge fan of is how easy it looks from the outside. It took way longer and cost way more than I ever expected. And I was only able to get there because I had a profitable service business funding everything in the background. Here's when this model actually makes sense. Like I said, I'm not against digital products. I've built them, I've sold them, and I totally understand their appeal. The ability to build something once and sell it repeatedly to help people at a price point that is accessible to a lot of people, to create something that generates revenue without requiring your time to deliver. All of that very sexy, genuinely attractive. But the people who do this well almost always have one of two things: either an existing large audience they can sell to immediately, or the time and money to build the audience properly before they launch. Building the product is actually the easiest part. Building the audience to sell it to is the hardest part, and it takes longer than all the marketing, selling courses about selling courses is going to tell you. So, if you're a service provider thinking about pivoting to digital products because client work feels unsustainable or hard, I would like to gently and very firmly push back on that. The digital product business doesn't remove the hard parts of running a business. It just trades one set of hard things for a completely different set of hard things. And it requires a longer runway before it becomes profitable. The faster path to breathing room, to profit, to time freedom is almost always to fix the service business first. Make it more profitable. Make it less dependent on your time. Build the cash and the space and the audience using the expert service business. And then, from that position of strength, decide whether the digital product business is actually the next business that you want to build. So that's what I'm going to break down in part 3 next week, the model that made all of this possible. If you don't want to wait on that, go to nobsmastery.com to learn all about our model. Or you can grab the first chapter of my book, Scale Solo, for experts who want to profit more, deliver faster, and cut the BS at scalesolobook.com. See you next week. I'll see you in part 3.